Welcome to the Sleep Factory. Tonight's story is a calm, introspective journey called A Quiet Fortune. My future self showed me the way. It's a gentle tale about a man who receives a visit from his future self, not with lottery numbers or doomsday warnings, but with a notebook and quiet clarity. Designed to help listeners drift into sleep, this story explores themes of time, peace, and the quiet wealth that comes from within. It began with the hum of the refrigerator. That's what I remember most about that night. The quiet buzz of the kitchen in the dark, the smell of chamomile tea steeping too long, and the rain ticking against the windows like a metronome set to almost asleep. I was sitting alone, barefoot on the cold tile floor, not for any dramatic reason, just because I didn't want to go to bed yet. Not because I wasn't tired. I was, but in that heavy kind of way. The kind of tired that wraps itself around your ribs, not your eyes. And then, someone knocked on the door. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I didn't move at first. I thought maybe I imagined it, or maybe it was the rain changing direction. But then came a voice, low, familiar. "It's okay," it said. "You can open the door. I'm not here to hurt you." It was my voice. Exactly my voice. Same cadence, same breath at the end of the sentence. I opened the door. He looked just like me, maybe 7 or 8 years older. Hair thinner, face calmer, worn in a way that didn't look tired, just experienced, like someone who had finally stopped rushing everywhere. He was wearing a soft gray jacket and holding an old notebook. Nothing else, no glowing time machine, no dramatic swirl of light, just a man, a version of me. "I don't have long," he said, "but that's the point." We sat at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of tea steaming between us. I remember the way he held his both hands, like he was cold. But I wasn't sure if it was the weather or the timeline. "You've been waiting for something to break," he said. "You think it's going to come from outside, a windfall, a miracle. Or maybe you're just waiting to burn out completely so you don't have to try anymore." I didn't say anything. He smiled like someone who's had this conversation before. Because of course he had. "I'm not here to give you lottery numbers or warn you about disasters. I'm here to give you this." He slid the notebook across the table. It was a simple black journal, the kind you'd find in a discount bin at a bookstore. The first page had one sentence, written in my handwriting. "You already know what you want. Stop waiting for someone else to say it's okay." The rest of the pages were filled with short entries. Dates, observations, tiny actions. Started writing every night again. Said no to another pointless pitch meeting. Went for a walk instead of doom scrolling. Posted that weird idea even though I thought no one would care. People cared. Each page was ordinary, and yet each one felt like a breadcrumb back to something I'd lost. My future self closed the book and said, "This is how it happens, not all at once, not with a bang, with small intentional peace." "Peace?" I asked. "How does that make me rich?" He looked up. "Because peace is rare, and people will pay for it." He gestured toward the walls, the apartment, the hum of the fridge, the soft sound of rain. "You're already building it. You just haven't noticed." We talked for maybe an hour, or a minute, or 10 years. Time was soft around him. Everything felt less sharp. He told me to keep the journal, not as a prophecy, as a blueprint. He said, "You don't need to chase wealth. You just need to stop burying the ways it's trying to find you. and then he stood. He walked to the door, and just before he stepped into the rain, he looked back. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You just haven't done it yet. But you will." I never saw him again, but I still have the notebook. The next morning, the world was unchanged. No headlines, no mysterious disappearance. Just sun through thin curtains and the smell of rain still lingering on the windowsill. But something inside me had shifted. The notebook sat where he left it, still warm from the tea we hadn't finished. I opened it again, running my fingers along the cover, like it was something ancient, something sacred. Page after page, my future self had written about things that didn't seem extraordinary, until you saw them lined up like stepping stones back to yourself. One page simply said, "Make peace the goal, not the reward." I read that 5 times before closing the book and walking out into the misty street, barefoot, coffee in hand. The days after that felt quiet, not in the sense that nothing happened. In fact, things started happening with surprising ease. But my reaction to them was different, softer, more curious. I opened my laptop, like always. But instead of jumping into news, metrics, and inbox chaos, I opened a blank document and just wrote. Not for an audience, not for a paycheck. For the first time in years, I wrote for myself. 15 minutes became 30. 30 became 2 hours. By lunchtime, I had outlined an idea I'd shelved years ago. A story app that didn't try to steal attention, but helped people let go of it. The kind of thing I would have scoffed at before. Not scalable, too quiet, no market. But now it didn't matter, because something deeper had clicked into place. I wasn't building for the world anymore. I was building for the version of me who sat at the table with a quiet smile and a journal full of breadcrumbs. 1 week later, I found a sticky note tucked into a book on my shelf. I swear I'd never written it. And yet, it was in my handwriting. Trust boredom. It's where all the gold is buried. It made no sense at first. But over the next few days, I started leaning into it. I stopped filling every silent moment with noise. No podcasts while walking, no music while showering, no background TV while eating, just stillness. That's when the patterns started to appear. I noticed when my mind wandered toward ideas that excited me, and when it wandered toward guilt or fear. I noticed which people's names made me exhale, and which made my stomach twist. I noticed that most of my life had been built not around what I wanted, but around what I feared would happen if I stopped performing. The journal helped me clean house, not just externally, but inside. There was an entry that said, "Your life will stop feeling like a performance when you stop imagining an audience." I read it on a loop, like a lullaby, and over time, I stopped imagining that audience. The invisible critics, the hypothetical clients, the future version of me that was always disappointed. Ironically, that's when people started reaching out, curious, interested, warm. Old ideas I'd buried years ago started getting traction. Not because I marketed them, but because they carried a frequency I hadn't known how to tap into before. A kind of quiet confidence, like a tuning fork vibrating at a lower, more grounded frequency. One morning, I received an email from someone I deeply admired, a writer who had quietly shaped my way of seeing the world. They had read something I posted, something soft and strange and vulnerable. They said it reminded them of a letter they wrote to themselves once, when they were lost. They wanted to collaborate. I didn't leap out of my chair. I didn't fist pump or post about it. I just smiled, made a cup of tea, and wrote a quiet note in the journal. Wealth comes when your inner world is no longer for sale. Around this time, I started to notice something strange. The journal was changing. New entries were appearing, written in the same hand with the same pen, but I hadn't written them, at least not consciously. One read, "You're not predicting the future. You're remembering the one you already built." I stopped asking how that was possible. Some part of me had stopped needing explanations. The brain rested. The heart took over. That too became wealth. One night, I went for a walk just before midnight. The air was thick with the smell of wet pavement and distant jasmine. Somewhere in the city, a train moaned through a tunnel. I sat on a bench by the river and asked aloud, "Why me?" There was no voice this time, no figure in the dark, but the wind moved differently for a moment, just enough to make the leaves whisper something I couldn't quite hear, and I realized it wasn't about why me, it was about now me, the version of me that had finally stopped negotiating with life and started listening. Weeks passed, then months. Not much had changed on the outside. I still lived in the same apartment, woke up to the same kettle, the same window. But the man inside it, he was different. I started doing things that didn't make sense to the old version of me. I offered free guidance to people online, started quietly journaling ideas for others to find peace the way I had. I wasn't chasing clients anymore. I was building something deeper, something still. That's when the journal changed again. I flipped it open one night and saw an entry I didn't remember writing, even though it was in my handwriting. Wealth is what remains when nothing owns you. I read that over and over again, and I realized I hadn't been chasing money since the night he arrived. And yet, I wasn't struggling. In fact, strange opportunities had started appearing. A publisher reached out, a podcast producer, a startup looking to build wellness tools, asking for exactly the kind of vision I'd quietly been sketching in the back of notebooks. But none of it came with pressure. It didn't feel like a pitch. It felt like an invitation. I said yes. To the ones that felt light, to the ones that didn't ask me to be anything other than exactly who I was. One day, a payment hit my account. Quietly, substantial. I sat there staring at it, and I didn't celebrate. I didn't doubt it. I just smiled, and I made tea. That night, I sat at the same kitchen table. The rain was back, soft and rhythmic, just like before. I lit a candle, breathed, and opened the journal again. This time I flipped to the very last page, and there, in handwriting that didn't look like mine anymore, but felt like mine from the future, was a single sentence. Now go back to the beginning. I looked around the room, and then I understood. I stood, walked to the small cabinet near the fridge, pulled out a new notebook, the same kind he gave me, still wrapped in plastic. I opened it to the first page. I wrote, "You already know what you want. Stop waiting for someone else to say it's okay." Then I walked to the door and knocked 3 times. Pause. 3 more. And I waited.